Welcome to Three Pasty White Guys. This is a podcast that focuses on what's going on today in the world of sports. I'm Tanner Castora. I'm joined by Dan Ludwig and Mike Merriman. We're three kids that grew up together in the same neighborhood. We're now off to college, and we decided to put together a podcast, talk about what's going on in sports. We're big sports fans, diehard sports fans. Today we want to focus on college football. We're going to talk about the college football playoff, if we agree or disagree with the Final Four teams. And the second topic we want to tackle is, should the playoff expand? So, all right, we'll start with the playoff. Letty, you can introduce your thoughts.
Well, I think the playoff committee got it right. I mean, four best teams made it, four most deserving teams made it. Don't really have any complaints.
I mean, I don't have any complaints here, but Tanner's looking like he's got something.
All right, okay. So, I'm fine with Alabama. I'm fine with Ohio State. I'm fine with Clemson. I have a problem with Washington.
How?
And listen,
Okay.
I haven't heard this said on TV. I haven't heard this said anywhere. Do you guys know what the Pac-12's best win out of conferences as a whole? I'm not talking about just Washington. Every team in their conference. Do you know what their best win is out of their conference?
I'm guessing it's not very good.
Probably.
It's from California, who beat Texas Tech.
Oof.
It's a joke.
Else?
I'm sorry.
But you can't hold that against Washington.
I'm sorry. Cal beat Texas. Well, no. That my point is okay.
Okay.
Then my other question for both of you is, it's really not an opinion. When I ask you, what is the best conference in college football this year?
Oh, Big Ten. No doubt.
Dan? Bloody? And do you agree?
Yeah.
Okay, so we all three agree the Big Ten is the best conference.
Yeah.
You just left out the champion of that conference. That doesn't make sense. Washington. But my point is, they didn't play.
You're hurting your own argument here, because here's what you end up doing, though. If you're going to be leaving out the champion of the Big Ten Conference, the team that should be left out would be Ohio State, who did not win
No.
I understand you saying that Washington isn't the best team. I think Washington gets their ass kicked by both Michigan, by Penn State, by Wisconsin. I think it's not even going to be a contest with Alabama and Washington. But at the end of the day, they did win, and they are one of the Power 5 conferences.
Okay.
In years past, it's been a very good conference.
So if you're we'll get to Ohio State in a second here.
Okay.
But we're comparing the team. What the committee said, it came down to Penn State and Washington, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so Washington plays no one out of conference and only beat teams in their conference. No one in their conference beat anyone. I mean, it's because they got in over Penn State because they were 12-1 and Penn State was 11-2.
Yes.
But Penn State played two ranked teams out of conference. They played Temple and beat them, and they played Pittsburgh and they lost to them by 3. And then they won the best conference in football. I have a problem with them being left out. Not only that, they have 2 great wins. They beat number 7 Wisconsin and number 2 Ohio State. That's the best win of anyone. And you left them out? I mean,
I think you have to leave them out. You have to leave them out, though, because look, if you put Penn State in, then you're opening up a huge can of worms. Because then you're saying, oh, okay, let's take a team that we probably all agree is better than Penn State, Michigan. You're leaving Michigan out in favor of Ohio State in this instance. I mean, Michigan could.
We beat Michigan.
I get that.
Ohio State beat Michigan,
but it was at Ohio State and it was in overtime.
But they won. It doesn't matter.
I get that. What I'm saying is that Michigan also went and kicked Penn State's ass. That wasn't even a game. They destroyed the Big Ten champion. And the Big Ten champion got in through tiebreakers because they beat Ohio State, yes, but all 3 of those teams had 1 loss in the Big Ten except for Michigan. So
okay, going with this, though. We were talking about Washington and Penn State.
I know. So what I'm saying, you can't put in Penn State without opening yourself up a giant can of worms. Then you can have Michigan saying, well, we should have been in there. We're a better team than Penn State. We beat Penn State. They were alleviating all of that argument by putting in a team who only had 1 blemish on their record.
So you're telling me the committee took the easy way out?
Yes, they took the easy way out, but that's in some.
I don't.
No, they took the right way out. Penn State had 2 awful losses. Washington's only loss was to a
They
very
did
good
not have
USC
2 awful
team.
losses.
Lost it.
They did not have
Getting
2
blown
awful
out by
losses.
40 to Michigan. That's an awful loss.
That's a bad loss, but Michigan's a great team. And then the Pitt loss
They
is
lost
not
by
a
40.
but it's a great team. And then the Pitt loss is not an awful loss. They're ranked and they lost by 3.
If
Yeah,
you're one
no,
of
I
the
don't
top
think-
4 teams in the country, you should not be losing by 40 points to anyone.
But okay. But then let's go back to 2014.
I think Tanner would
Ohio
come down to who's the most
Wait.
deserving. And at the end of the day,
But Penn State's more deserving than Washington. They definitely are.
At the end of the day,
That's my argument.
does have 2 losses, one of them by 40 points. Washington does not have that. And you can say, okay, the Pac-12 as a whole is a really bad conference. They don't have any good wins.
No.
They don't have that many good wins, and Washington has only beat teams from the Pac-12. Granted, but they still are 12-1.
But
They won
see,
Pac-12.
see,
And
this
it's
is
not
this
like
is my problem. This is my problem with how I go against your argument. You're telling me that Penn State isn't deserving because they lost by 40. Okay, that I don't. But deserving. If I think of deserving, what have you done? Like the positive things you've done. They've done more impressive things than Washington has, but they've had higher highs than Washington has, but just not as many lows. Well, I'm gonna give more importance to those highs than the lows because Washington, the best team on their schedule they played, we know was USC, and they lost on their home field to the best team they played. They lost. Penn State beat number 2. Penn State beat number 7. It's ridiculous.
That was such a fluky win, though.
I don't care. They won.
Yeah.
But we just played Ohio State, Michigan. You said, well, Ohio State beat Michigan. That was Ohio State should not have won that game. It doesn't. Who cares? I don't
Fair
care
enough.
what should happen. They won. Washington has just the wins are just not there, and the out of conference is not there. They only got in because they're 12-1, and if they played Penn State's schedule, they're not 12-1.
I guess
That's what makes me mad.
Yeah, okay, but they're giving the tip of a cap, their cap to Washington, who is 12-1, and you got to be honest. Look, the Pac-12 this year, agreed, is pretty bad, but it is still the Pac-12, and they have not always been bad. And who knows what happens in bowl season? Okay,
I think
What
they
if
should
the
be good.
Pac-12 goes into bowl season and ends up beating a lot of quality teams in the bowl season. What happens then? Then all of a sudden you're leaving a team that was 12-1, and you're like, well, the conference was weak, so we're not going to put them in, and they're 12-1, and then they go and the Pac-12 wins out. Let's say,
Okay, Mike,
or they beat a lot of quality teams. Then all of a sudden next year rolls around, and they've
That's
made
next-
their lives more hellish.
Sure. You're right about that in the future and for next year, but you can't. But you're picking the playoff based on now, and the wins we've seen now have been awful by the Pac-12 and have been solid by the Big Ten. So maybe the Pac-12 will prove me wrong. They might, but from what they've shown this season, it's just not there.
I think they're setting a precedent. They're setting a precedent too, and I think what the committee is saying.
Play no one, you play no one, and just go win 12 games.
I don't think that's what they're saying. What they're saying is that if you win a Power 5 conference and you have 1 loss versus 2 losses, we'll give you the tip of the cap. But leads into the bigger question of like there should be a bigger playoff. You're leaving out 2 conference champions this year. 2.
Okay, before, no, you're leaving out 1. Oh, you're right. You're leaving 2. You're right. But anyways, before we get into should we expand? I just want to hear real quickly from you, Dan Ludwig. Give me your explanation. I haven't really heard your explanation of why Washington gets in over Penn State.
Washington has 1 loss. Penn State has 2. Penn State's schedule within the Big Ten really was not that good.
That's not their fault, though.
How's it not? It doesn't matter. They didn't play anyone in the Big Ten.
They beat 2 top 7 teams.
Besides that,
But Tanner, you just said though that Washington should get punished for not having a solid schedule.
No, out of conference schedule.
Yeah. Okay. Well, okay. Who did Penn State play out of conference?
Penn State played Penn State, That's the same
That's
as Portland
garbage.
State. Yep.
It's garbage.
Same as Portland State with Washington. They played Pittsburgh, a top 25 team, and Temple, a top 25 team. Okay, they went
They're
two.
barely top 25 teams.
Idaho, Portland State, Rutgers, and you're gonna.
I agree with you. Washington's non-conference schedule is a joke.
Washington is going to get smacked, and if they do get smacked, then if this situation happens again next year, the Big Ten's getting in over them because Penn State's better.
I think that's, again, what the committee is going for is like, look, let it play out. If the Pac-12 gets embarrassed in the playoffs, which honestly they probably will, Alabama's probably going to romp all over them. But, like, if they get completely embarrassed, then, yeah, if that situation happens again next year, shit, I mean, you're going to want to put in another Big Ten team.
All right, guys, I got one more point about the 4 teams that got in. And this is – I'm not saying this team should have got in over Washington, but it definitely should have been – there's definitely an argument here. Oklahoma, okay? Oklahoma, manhandled by Houston, manhandled by Ohio State on their home field. They won out from there on, won their conference, okay? Washington had a better record and also won their conference. But Oklahoma went out and played a top 25 team in Houston. They went out and played a top 5 team in Ohio State. Now, they lost, sure, but they went out and played them, and Washington didn't. So if Washington has Oklahoma's schedule, are they going to beat Houston and Ohio State? Maybe Houston. I don't think Ohio State. So why is Oklahoma – why are they so far behind Washington, who didn't schedule anyone? I mean, what's message is that sending?
I think part of what the committee is saying is that we want to see a conference championship game, but I also do believe that this is a perfect tie-in again to the expansion thing, because what the message is sending is that while you have 2 losses, you did lose to Houston, you did lose to Ohio State. I agree with you that like they deserve to be recognized for actually going out and scheduling those games above Washington. But okay, and here's something. Okay, as a college football coach, you want your team to win the national championship, right? We're not sitting here saying Washington played cupcake teams so that they could just make it to the playoff, and then get shellacked by Alabama, right? They want to win. We agree that they want to go and win the national championship.
Yeah.
Right? So as a coach, if you want to go and beat Alabama, you're going to want your team to be battle-tested. Okay? So I think a playoff, in its essence, will end up spurring coaches on to scheduling harder games, not just for the sake of getting into the playoff, but also for the sake of being able to go, and when you get into the playoff and have to go face an Alabama or Ohio State or Clemson, being able to actually compete with those teams. Because it's doing no service to the Washington team. I mean, scheduling easy out-of-conference games does them no service.
Well, you need difference in most instances. Like, Ohio State doesn't make it, I don't think, unless they go and beat Oklahoma at Oklahoma. If you take that win away, I don't think you could put them in over Penn State.
No, you're right. But you just said, Mike, you said it serves them, doesn't serve them well. They need to be more battle-tested. I mean, that's not what the AD is thinking, because they just played no one, and now they're getting a huge paycheck for beating no one.
I'm saying I'm not.
They don't care.
What I'm saying is from a coach's perspective. The coach is sitting in that room with the athletic director and saying, "Okay, who should we play?" I would believe that coaches would want to play some quality opponents, like Alabama, like Oklahoma, like Ohio State, like those teams do every single year by scheduling a tough out-of-conference opponent. I would think that a coach would be more inclined to want to do that, to test his guys early on, if you have more playoff spots. If you know as a coach that you can slip up.
But you don't. We're talking about 4 teams. So
but in Washington's defense, these schedules are made years in advance, and there's no way they thought they would have been this good this quickly under Chris Peterson.
I agree, but I just that doesn't mean you get a pass. Like, I don't know. It upsets me that Penn State, who is Penn State is more deserving, without question in my eyes. Didn't get it over them, and then it upsets me that Oklahoma, who goes and plays the big boys and loses, gets punished for it. But whatever. All right, we'll move on now.
Look, it upsets me too. I believe that they got it right by putting Washington in, but I don't necessarily agree with it completely.